Okay, you're listening to KX 93.5, Laguna's Only FM. I'm Scott Hayes, here with my co-host Robert Palmer, and this is Radio Caravan.
Robert? Yes, it is. Good morning, and we're very excited to have our guest in here this morning.
Please.
The one, the only, Max Gardner.
Max Gardner.
Formerly Haberdasher, as I recall. Been involved in banking for years, was with the Irvine Company for many decades, running Irvine apartment communities. For those of you that know these giant apartment complexes that are all over the county, that was care of Max and his idea. Literally transformed the entire county. And one day when he went to retire, I looked at him, I said, what do you want to do now? And that's what brings us here today.
So, good morning, Max.
Good morning.
And as we mentioned before the break, Max is president and CEO of Orange County United Way, the largest funder of nonprofits in Orange County. Is that a good way to
Well, certainly one of the largest.
One of the largest, okay. And just in the spirit of full disclosure here, how is Robert doing in his capacity as chair of the board of directors for Orange County United Way?
Well, I have to be careful because he is my boss at United Way. He stepped down now. He's vice chair now instead of chairman. So,
is that right?
So I don't have to be quite as nice to him as I have been over the years, but I still a little bit of respect occasionally. So as much as he deserves. How's that?
Robert, I'm curious. Why did you get involved in Orange County United Way? What was your sort of motivation for being involved?
Max is a big factor in that. Mm-hmm. Max was very involved in the Tocqueville Society and asked me to be his co-chair one day.
Do you want to describe the Tocqueville Society?
Tocqueville Society, Alexis de Tocqueville came over from France many years ago and was amazed that Americans actually donated money to people. That concept was virtually unheard of in Europe. Mm-hmm. Went back and wrote a bunch of famous novels about it. And the Tocqueville Society was created, was it in the 80s, Max?
Yeah, 80s.
In the 80s, where they decided to create a special level of giving of $10,000 or more as a special group of United Way donors, and to honor them separately and to recruit them separately. And we've had our chapter here for many years, and Max was the chair and asked me to be the co-chair. And we have a few hundred members, and it's a very proud part to be part of that.
Well, we've got some national members that have been recognized as well. Peter Ux was recognized very early on as the National Tocqueville Award winner. That's an award they give out each year. And then Mike Haid of Western National was awarded that same honor just about a month ago.
And indeed, he's the head of United Way of France and International.
He's the chairman of the board for United Way of France. He helped found it back in the home of Tocqueville, and he's now helping to spread United Ways throughout Europe.
It's pretty amazing.
Very cool. Yeah, you guys travel in interesting circles. I keep saying that, and I love it. So, Max, let's kind of get down to some basics. I thought we'd start with the basics here. Orange County United Way raised, I think we mentioned the other day, or you mentioned to me, about $18 million last year.
About $18 million last year. We think this year we'll finish up in June, our fiscal year. We're targeting around $20 million.
That's an amazing amount of money to raise in 1 year, yeah?
You know, what's amazing about that is it really doesn't come from, it's not what I think of as deep pockets. We have some major donors, but it's really from a lot of small donors. A lot of folks do payroll deduction, and a lot of the companies that we work with match those contributions. So it's a lot of the companies like, Western Digital, Ingram Micro, Edwards Life Sciences. A lot of the major employers, Allergan. I have to be careful not to leave some out, but there's so many of them that run campaigns with us, and they allow the employees to make a small contribution each paycheck, just $1, $5, $10, whatever they want to do, and that over the course of the year really adds up for us.
And boy, can it! Western Digital, their employees last year, with matching funds, gave us over $1 million.
That's right.
Year.
Wow, and that's
extraordinary.
Well, that's amazing, yeah. And that's employees contributing to that process, yeah.
Combination of employees donating and the company matching that. Yes,
gotcha.
They're our honoree this year for they're our favorite partner. How's that?
Yeah, very nice. I read somewhere 170,000 donors in a year. Does that sound about right?
Well, no, for us in Orange County, that's a little high. We have over 40,000 donors in our organization right now. And this year we'll have over 40,000 people make a contribution. So you can tell with $20 million, that's not major. That's not $1,000 a pop. That's those are donations that add up over time.
Very
And this
nice.
year is our 90th year, going on 91 in Orange County.
Yeah, we just had our birthday party.
We did indeed.
We had about 350 people over at the Marriott to celebrate 90 years, and look forward to for the next 10. So,
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Okay, so of the money you raise, what percent of it ultimately ends up going to programs in the county?
yeah, we're at about our combined overhead is about 17%. I'm glad you opened that door because you know, as I told you before, my main role, I think, in the community is to help encourage philanthropy. It's not so much whether you do something with United Way, but it's more important that you do something, because there's plenty of need out there, and we can talk about that. But one of my favorite issues to pick on is the overhead ratio. People always talk about the first thing that people can understand easily is what's the expense ratio for a charity, and so they want to know how much goes to program,
Sure.
etc.
And it's a
They have
fair
right
question.
to know, yeah.
Yeah.
It is a fair question. My concern with it is people tend to make that the first question.
Like I just did.
Yes, thank
But you know, that's why I made it the first question.
I appreciate that. But the fact is that what you really want to know is what are the outcomes that an organization is doing. But more important than that is you don't want to strap down these nonprofits, the agencies that we support. We don't want them to be running on such a thin edge that they don't invest in their people, that they don't invest in their systems, that they don't invest in their facilities.
Right.
And those are expenses. And so if any for-profit organization was running at a 5% overhead number, you'd be worried that they weren't going to invest enough to be around next year.
Right.
And so in fact, there was an article or a letter published very recently by the Better Business Bureau and Charity Navigator and GuideStar, three of the real watchdogs for charities, that said, overhead level is important to pay attention to, but it's not the be-all and the end-all.
Yeah. So that 17% you mentioned, it's about average, would you say?
Yeah,
across the board?
we like people to be under 25%. Under 20 is a little bit better. If you get down to the 10% level, you're worried that they're not spending enough to reinvest in themselves. And then you'll have there are actually organizations, nonprofits, that report spending zero on overhead. So it's a little bit
That's not right.
distorted. Yeah,
Right.
that's not a fair. We don't have any of those. We wouldn't have any of those in Orange County, though.
And it depends on what you do as well. I mean, historically, when people think of United Way, you think more of the community chest with just
Right.
simply raising money. There's a thermometer in the main town, and you hand out the money. So what's your overhead? How much could that take?
Right.
Well, nowadays, we have a ton of our own programs.
Right.
And we've got a lot of staff running those. So we're not only just raising money, we're creating programs and helping people directly.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not your father's United Way. So.
It is
Right.
not.
And speaking of staff, I think you had mentioned to me on the phone the other day, you have about 34
That's right,
staff.
right.
But when you started about 2 or 3 years ago, there were 50 to 60 staff.
Yeah, we were over 50 staff when we started. We've become a little bit more streamlined than we were when I joined the organization. Just really trying to make sure we're focused on the key aspects of what we need to accomplish. We have a great team.
Is it true you made $1 the first year?
I did.
He still has that dollar, too.
I haven't cashed that check yet. Yeah, when I took this job to begin with, I wasn't sure what I was going to do for the future, and I took it as a volunteer. But when they asked me to do it, I made sure that they paid me more. I wanted to make sure I was getting paid more than Robert was, and he was
worth nothing.
He was working for free, so I made him pay me $1 for the first year.
That's funny.
Yeah, we had just lost our president. We had an emergency board call, and I recall on that call with the group on board saying, if there was only one of us that had recently become unemployed and who had just retired and who had nothing to do and was looking for an easy way to make $1. And I kind of volunteered Max, and he stepped up as an interim for 1 year and then campaigned and got the job full time the next year and has done an amazing job for us.
You guys make a good team here, by the way.
Yeah, it's been a fun partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one's Mutt and which one's Jeff.
Okay, so I'm going to get off. You sort of, when I called you yesterday on the phone, you sort of led me in a far different direction for this interview than I had anticipated. So last night I tried to kind of scramble to catch up to the best of my ability to understand what exactly you were talking about. So I had to take some notes here. There's apparently this shift in the prevailing mode or model of philanthropy that you had mentioned. The former shift was sort of predicting outcomes, guaranteeing outcomes. And now it seems to be that it's a complex world and it's a lot more complicated in terms of how you go about donating or investing those funds that you can collect. Can you kind of explain that concept for us?
Yeah, I don't know that the world has changed to become more complex than it was, other than we understand it a little bit better, I think,
Right.
than we have in the past. And the world of philanthropy has changed some. It used to be in the United Way, we raised money and agencies would apply to us for a grant. And if they were doing something that seemed to be good work, we'd issue them a grant
Right.
and help support their efforts.
And that system seemed to work at the
Well,
time?
it did. I mean, but keep in mind, this was before the internet, before before people could learn. So, today, if you wanted to support a domestic violence program, you could find a domestic violence program directly if you wanted to write
20
a check.
of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, we had to make sure that we were adding value to the community in terms of what we were doing. And that really led us in a direction that I think proved to be much more valuable to the community than what we were doing before. And today, we're focused on, our whole approach is we want to improve individual lives, and in the process make the community stronger, because that's what really helps all of us in the community. If we help make people healthier to where they can take care of themselves, where they don't have to use emergency rooms for hospital care, for medical care, where the kids are getting an education, where they can feed their families, that actually makes the community stronger and makes it better for all of us. Not to mention it makes their lives better.
Sure.
So we focus on four things: education, income, health, and housing. Those are the four. We know those are the building blocks for a self-sufficient life. And if you have an education, if you have a job, if you're healthy and you have a place to live, you're going to be okay. So all of our work is focused on that. But more specifically, more directly, we actually, instead of having agencies or people come to us and say, we have a program that will help solve that problem or help solve a portion of that problem, we're much more specific on what we want to see change in the community. And we actually go out with RFPs, requests for proposal,
Right.
to agencies to come to us and say, okay, we will meet the need that you see in the community, and therefore you should fund our program.
So explain the adoption of this sort of new scenario here. How does that actually work in your everyday world?
Yeah, you're talking the strategy,
The
Phase
strategy, yeah.
2024?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you have to understand some of the background on it. We wanted to also be sure that we were doing what the community wanted us to do, that we were being responsive to the needs of the community. So we really took about a year and a half. Robert would tell you it was closer to 10 years.
Called it the
but it
Baton Death March of
just
fundraising.
felt like 10 years to get through it. But we wanted to be very, very thorough in how we reached out to the community to understand what the needs were and what the community wanted us to do. And so we really had a long engagement process, talking with our donors, talking with the cities, the county, talking with the experts in the area, to say in each of those areas, what should we be focused on and what should we concentrate on? And we came out with four specific goals, in one in each of those areas that were, and these were not United Way goals, these were community goals that came out of the conversation. And the four goals are to cut the high school dropout rate in half, to decrease by 25% the financially unstable families in the community, to increase by 1/3 the healthy youth in our community, and to cut in half the homeless or housing insecure children in the community. And those are 10-year goals. And we right now, virtually everything we work on or that we focus on, our energy goes toward, is how do we meet those goals over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And we still do some work on the safety net side just to make sure some folks don't fall through the cracks. But
And Max, as a part of that process, what I
Yeah,
thought was
please.
interesting that I saw was, for the first time, United Way truly became the collaborator of the county. And Max and I refer to us as being the hub and everyone else being the spokes. Because unlike most other agencies, United Way isn't competing with other people. We're not fighting for their dollar. We're trying to bring people together. I remember your story about the homeless shelters. Max is out working on a project, and it turns out if Tustin's full, they don't bother to call Irvine because they're competitors. And Max started collaborating and bringing them together in a common goal for communal function after our Stanford professor's idea of collaborative goals. And it's really made a difference with everyone pulling together, so to speak.
So I looked at this Stanford Review article webpage last night and tried to educate myself within the 30 minutes that I had available. So forgive my questions if they seem naive, but a lot of people who may be listening or watching may kind of be in a similar situation as I am.
Sure.
So I want to back up this FACE. This is an acronym for Fund, Advocate, collaborate, and educate.
That's correct.
And
yeah.
so how does that process work within OC United Way?
Well, what we touched on a minute ago is that what the old United Way model was basically funding. We didn't
Right.
do anything other than funding, but we're much more engaged now across the board. So FACE is an acronym for that. Advocate means to make sure that nobody knows more about what's going on in the community than we do. So when it comes to policy decisions, whether they're at the local or the state level, we need to have a voice. We need to speak up on behalf of those who don't have a voice to make sure that the conditions are understood by those that can make decisions and make spending allocations. On Collaborate, it's exactly what Robert was talking about, is making sure we're bringing people together to talk about the issues that exist and find ways to work together. And there's no reason for everybody to reinvent the wheel in terms of what works. We need to make sure that people understand that certain programs are more effective than others. And if we don't share that information, people aren't going to get the benefit of everybody else's knowledge, that everybody's out there doing their own thing. And educate may be the most important out of those, Scott. I think the folks that live in Orange County understand that there are people that have needs, but I think we need to educate them first on the extent of the issues. There's not a community that is more bifurcated in terms of the haves and the have-nots than Orange County. The difference between folks that live in the well-to-do neighborhoods, if you will,
Right.
and the very challenged neighborhoods, I'm not sure there's a community anywhere that has more extremes of the two. So we need to educate people on that, but we also need to educate people on the fact that matters to them, that they should care about that the strength of this overall community is really impacted by how well the rest of the community does. I mean, that's where customers, that's where workers come from, that's where the economy is driven by the overall community, not just by the coast. And then we have to educate people that there is actually something that can and is being done to solve those problems.
So, I mean, that sounds really complicated to me, and I'm not that complicated of an individual. So I did a little research, and I kind of confirmed these numbers with you the other day. There are roughly 3,000 registered nonprofits in Orange County.
Right.
If you're funding about 90 programs in a year, is that
Right.
about right? Which is about 3% of those registered nonprofits. Is that accurate?
Yeah, but keep in mind that the size of those, there are a lot of nonprofits in that math, in that 3,000,
Yeah.
that are relatively small nonprofits that are just doing a small bit of work. There's probably 300 to 400 nonprofits in the community that are really of scale, that really making a difference.
So I'm a nonprofit in the community, and I want to come to your organization for funding.
Okay.
What is the process I would have to go through, and what would you in Orange County United Way look for in terms of whether I'm the right vehicle for you or not?
Well, first of all, you'd have to be working in one of the areas that we've identified that we want. So
Education, income, health, and housing.
Well, but even more specific than
Okay.
that. Right now, we're working very specifically. Take housing, for
Okay.
family housing. One of the big challenges we have is we want to get families out of motels and into permanent housing.
Okay.
So if you happen to be working in that exact area, if you're a Project Hope Alliance or an organization like that that's working in that area, when we put out our RFP for that, then you would apply to us for a grant. There's a whole process that we go through, and it's all led by volunteers. It's all done, I mean, our staff guides it, but volunteers are the ones that do the interviews, do the visits to the organizations, and make the decisions and the recommendations to our board of directors on where the funding goes. And we have a whole list of things that we double check to make sure that agencies qualify. And we want to make sure that they have a board of directors, that they have financial statements that are public. We want to make sure that they have a mission. I mean, there are a whole series of points that we want to make sure that we know they're legitimate and they actually operate. And then we want to see what their results are and what they're actually producing in terms of change of life for people.
Are results or measuring success, is that still a part of the process?
Oh, absolutely.
Very much so.
Very much so.
And you'd be surprised at the scrutiny that's given to it. And we have a bunch of volunteers that sit on committees, just like a government grant. I mean, there's 50 actual business people sitting in a room looking at these RFPs and testing them. And then we do testing at year end to see if they met their goals. And if they don't get funded anymore. Or they have
we
to make
actually
changes.
go through. We just finished a 3-year grant cycle where every year we went back and measured the exact. We checked in with them quarterly, but we do a very specific, detailed review at the end of each year to say, okay, did they meet the measures that they said they were going to meet in terms of deliverables? And if they didn't, then they might have gone on a watch list, or we might not have funded them at all again for the next year.
So this collaborative, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and our view is if you're trusting us with your money, we better be checking up very carefully where it's
Right.
going.
Good. And so this collaborative process that we talked about earlier, are you involved in sort of every step of the way with the agency that's coming for you for the grant?
Well, the collaborative process is really more, it's not on a specific grant, it's really more on the community.
Okay.
So, whether it's in the area of housing or whether in education, take early grade literacy or preschool literacy. I mean, we're working with a number of other agencies to make sure that we're rolling out the right kind of programs and we're supporting the right kind of programs, whether it's an agency, and actually we're working now with some of the school districts to make sure that they're getting the support that they need. So we bring the different players together, and it's really the people that have not only the skill set and the knowledge, but the resources and the time and the passion to get things done, to work together. So you might have an organization that has volunteers. We may have a school district that needs readers to come in to spend time with the kids, and we match the two of you up so you can find a good place for an outlet for your work.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. You mentioned education, cut by half the high school dropout rate. Seems like an ambitious goal. What's sort of the program out there that's currently helping resolve that issue?
Well, so we have about 4,000 kids that drop out of high school every year.
Good.
Which,
Right.
and if you that doesn't seem like a huge number to some. It seems like an enormous number to me.
Right.
It's especially big when you look at the difference between the average high school dropout and the average high school graduate in the country. If you fast forward for the next 50 years, the impact of that one individual on your community is as much as $200,000. Just between an individual that uses resources, whether it's the emergency room or is in jail or support services, versus one who actually is gainfully employed, takes care of their family, etc. So if you multiply that times the 4,000 kids that are going to drop out this year, the number gets pretty
Adds
enormous.
up pretty quickly.
Yeah. So our whole approach is how do we do that? But you can't start just with the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. You have to go all the way back to, we're looking at a program that we just learned about where it's actually you go into the hospital and give newborn babies a book. You give it to their parents so they will start reading to the kid when he's first born.
Wow.
So you engage them, and then you might on a monthly basis provide them with a new book just to get parents in the process of reading to their children, because reading to your children is so incredibly important to their literacy and to their ability to learn over the years. And if you don't start early, then they're not going to get.
So the way to measure that is if there's 4,000 dropouts this year, you kind of revisit that in 5 years and determine how many dropouts are
10 years.
10 years. Is that the goal? 10
It's
years,
a 10-year goal. We'd like to. We'll measure it every year.
We track it annually.
We're going to track it every year. We're not going to close our eyes and wait till 10 years and say, how do we do?
Didn't do it.
But also we'll measure metrics along the way, Scott. So we'll be looking at one of my favorite terms is up until 3rd grade, kids learn to read. After 3rd grade, they read to learn. So that they don't know how to read by the time they're in 3rd grade, they're going to be very seriously behind in their education.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to get caught up without some real special needs.
I love that. Income reduced by 25% the number of unstable families in the community. How
Right.
do you go about making that happen?
So we have one of the things we're doing. We have 2 Spark Point centers that we've set up to really do financial literacy training. Is one of the big parts of that.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing how many people how people don't know how to open a checking account, or how to manage, how to have a budget, how to plan for the future, how to save for the future. What do you have to do? My pet peeve is the check cash, the check into cash kind of places where you can go cash your check.
Right.
Well, if you work and you cash your paycheck there every week for the year, you might spend as much as $1,000 just to cash your checks. Well, the banks around will all open a checking account for free for you. We have to connect people. We have to make sure they understand how it works. Not only that, but give them some confidence that it's okay to do it, because a lot of people, some of the folks don't trust the banks. So,
Health, to increase by 1/3 the healthy youth.
right. We're going to measure that by obesity. And so that's one we've got a request for information out on. We're really trying to understand the programs that are out there that will be more specific for that. But it's all about making sure that children and their parents understand the repercussions of the food that they eat, understand, getting out and play. You've seen the Play 60. That's going to be a real combination of efforts that we're working on in the community.
And then to cut in half the homeless and housing insecure, and you're focusing on children?
Well, we do focus a lot on children, but you have to focus on the families as well. Our theory is, and this again was driven by the volunteers that we worked with in the process. If we're going to change the conditions that exist in Orange County, we have to focus on the children and their families.
Yeah.
And you can't focus just on the children. We can find the kids a place to live, but you got to make sure they're with their families. So a lot of the focus is on not only the motel children we talked about a minute ago, but it's also about on families that are doubled and tripled up. There are so many families that are living in, whether it's a garage or whether it's a small apartment that's really designed for a single family where they have 2 or 3 families in that apartment. It's just overcrowded, and it's just not healthy. And it's very difficult then for kids not only to be healthy, but also to finish their education, et cetera.
I mean, it seems like every day there's a new challenge that you both have to face in terms of solving new problems that are facing the Orange County communities, yes? I mean, it's just a constant battle?
I have to. I'm not sure that the problems have changed all that drastically over the years, Scott. I think we're getting a better understanding of those issues. I will tell you that from the time that I joined United Way 2.5+ years ago, I'm constantly amazed by the good quality people out there trying to make a difference in this community and trying to improve the lives of those around us. I was absolutely stunned and amazed by how much is being done and how good-hearted people are really making a difference in this community. I think the challenge for us is to make sure that we're all working in concert to solve the issues together as opposed to all working individually to do a little piece, because the resources are probably there to solve a lot of these problems. We just have to be a little bit more collective in terms of how we approach it.
Let me do a shout out to one of those special people,
Yeah,
because
please.
Max won't do it. This is a family that works together and believes together. Max's wonderful wife, Arden, is the head of Human Options right now, and that's the group we talked about a few weeks ago. Just had their fundraiser, raised over $1 million at that event. And they help battered women and who are down and out with their families, but again, families through housing.
Right.
And this is an entire family that gives pretty much their whole life to charity right now.
Yeah.
So shout out to Arden.
Very nice. We've got about 2 minutes left. I'm going to get through a couple of quick questions, if I may. How can people get more involved in your organization, and do you have any sort of special needs?
Yeah, well, people can always. I mean, we say to support us, you can give, you can advocate, or you can volunteer. Best of all, you can do all three. We've got a couple of events coming. We just had our Women's Philanthropy Fund breakfast about, I think, 3 weeks ago. We had almost 700 people for breakfast. I would have said women, but more and more we have more men. The men of the breakfast, what we call the mob, was there. So we had we raised a little over $300,000 at that breakfast for our work. On June 29th, we have our Walk United coming up out at Angel Stadium. We'll have we anticipate 5,000 people or more. Steve and Cinda Churm are chairing that for us. We think it's going to be a great event out there.
You get to walk through the stadium. You get up on the Jumbotron.
You
It's a
see
lot of
yourself
fun.
on the Jumbotron. We'll have activities for the kids out and around. So it's a very fun, active morning. But more importantly, if you want to know more about United Way and the work we're doing, it's very fun. It's unitedwayoc.org, and our website's very easy to find. I hope. And you can follow me on Twitter or whatever else you want to do. So
Give us that website again.
it's www.unitedwayoc.org.
Excellent, excellent. Now, I kind of worked on this last question, so I'm going to read it, okay? As the head of the largest or one of the largest funders of nonprofits in Orange County, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges or issues facing or people who want to affect positive social change? What's one of the biggest challenges?
Well, probably the plethora of folks out there that are doing good work. I mean, there's such an array of nonprofits out there that are working. It's hard, I think, to distinguish some of the more effective ones from those that aren't. And candidly, that's our job. I mean, what we do in the community is to really make sure that we evaluate those organizations that are being effective, that are getting the work done, to make sure that we're really making a difference with the donations or the contributions. But more importantly, I think people just need to get involved. I mean, people, and you can support United Way, you can support your favorite charity, but there is plenty of opportunity out there to get involved and to get your kids and your family involved. I mean, it can be a very, I will tell you that you will get more back than you give if you really get involved in some of these organizations.
Yeah.
And there are a ton of them out there, and if you want to know any that are specific in an area, let me know. I'll be happy to help you with them.
You know, you guys make a great team here, by the way. So I know, Robert, you made this happen for us today, and I really appreciate the fact you brought Max in. I think this is one of probably the most important conversations we've had in this studio.
I think so, too. Yeah.
And you guys are doing great work, so thank you again for everything. Any last parting words? We got like 10 seconds, Robert.
No, thanks for coming in, Max. Thanks for all your good work, and my best to Arden.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Max. You've been listening to KX 93.5, Laguna's only FM. This is Radio Caravan. On behalf of myself, Scott Hayes, and Robert Palmer, we're out of here.